Welcome to a presentation on whiteboard coaching for career development. Let's say you have some talent on your team that is pretty well suited for the jobs that they have, and there's really not much more room for growth as it relates to the job requirements or functions. Or maybe you have an employee who wants to take that next step in the organization and become a leader or participate in some form of succession planning for a promotion down the road. Maybe you have some employees who, quite frankly, aren't ready for these positions, but they don't realize it, and you have to have that conversation. This is a technique leveraging whiteboard coaching to have that very conversation. We're going to give you the framework of the strategy, and you can certainly retrofit or make it your own. First of all, why whiteboards? A whiteboard becomes a visual representation of change. Very often people don't understand the reason we use whiteboard coaching or stress it so much is it becomes a great distraction for what you're actually saying. So when somebody sees a whiteboard of the things they need to do, it's really you facilitating or you telling them. But the fact of the matter is the whiteboard can serve as a distraction for you. So when we think about it, we also then have to have the conversation. So we're going to introduce you to two concepts, rating questions and something called functional requirements. You're going to combine a whiteboard and the rating questions to facilitate the conversation. First of all, what you're looking at is a whiteboard, and you're looking at it and it's divided into very specific columns. And so the process could be for a current job or could even be for futuristic opportunities. The first thing that you're going to want to do is talk about the functional requirements. So let's take a hypothetical example of an employee who wants to become a supervisor or manager. What you would do is list out on the far right side of the board all of the functional requirements for that job, which could be leading with conviction, handling conflict, doing end-of-the-year evaluations. Now, you don't want these just to be bullet items like a job description would have, but really give them some meat and what we say functionally describe what the output of that task or element of the job or requirement would look like. And you want to write these out, and I typically start with about 4 or 5 items. The next thing you do is you ask a rating question per functional requirement, meaning number 1, the rating question that you're going to ask is you're going to get a response, and that question is going to be specific to the functional requirement number 1. A rating question could be on a scale of 1 to 6. 6 is you're absolutely confident and you feel like you have the knowledge and core skill sets to do this functional requirement flawlessly and without hesitation. So when you give your rating questions, those bookend responses, 1 and 6 in this case, you have to give them some adjectives and specificity. So 6, you could do it flawlessly, without hesitation, absolute knowledge and skill set. That's a strong commitment to give yourself a 6 to, correct? Then you could put a 1. You'd have no idea where to start, you'd be pretty choppy, you'd be pretty hesitant, and you'd probably lack confidence. So have your rating questions ready to go, and then you're going to get a response. The response is typically going to give a rating of, let's say, a 3 or 4. Here's the magic behind this. They start to see the whiteboard unfold. They start to see the whiteboard of their personal change, of their personal change requirements. So if somebody says they're 3 or 4, the next thing is, what actions or activities do we need to take to meet the functional requirements? So essentially you start in the far right, go back to the far left, and work yourself across the board. You essentially then fill this up, and I usually start with 5, and then you can start to design your coaching. So let's say functional requirement number 1 might be handling conflict. Functional requirement number 2 might be doing end of the year reviews. So what could you do from a coaching strategy? 1, you could be coaching the person on handling conflict one-on-one. Number two, you could have them go interview people in the HR department of how to do an end of the year review, and more importantly, come back and teach you as if you were a new manager, so they really possess the knowledge required. This process gets people to see what they need to do to handle and successfully facilitate change. Now, if you simply have the conversation you're not ready, that can also have some very far-reaching punitive results. So the process of whiteboard coaching not only absolves you of taking on that role, but it positions them to see what they own, and those are the actions and activities to facilitate the required change.